Hi, everybody. This is SAAD for the SAAD Truth. Yesterday, my family and I visited the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Montreal. Saw all sorts of soul lifting, beautiful art, but I also saw some postmodern art. You could have a bowel movement, take a picture of that bowel movement, and then present it as a reflection of the existential angst of humanity, and then have it exhibited in all of the top museums around the world. Now, of course, this is very much part and parcel of postmodernism. Typically, when I criticize postmodernism, I discuss it in the context of academia, where any nonsensical concatenation of words constitutes highbrow philosophizing. But of course, it means nothing. It's garbage. But of course, who are we to judge what meaning is, since all meaning is relative and we can deconstruct all meaning and so on. But of course, this notion, this nihilistic notion of, who are we to judge anything, applies to postmodern music, postmodern art. So there are two great short clips by, let me just get their exact names, by the Advertising Standard of Canada, where they, in one case, they show a pianist who comes out and just starts randomly, hitting the piano, the keys of the piano, and then even smashing his head on the piano, and bravo, bravo, it's so wonderful. And the idea is that, art is subjective, but there should be truth in advertising, which is very much exactly what postmodern jazz is, right? It's just random noise, right? Now, you could like different types of music. You could like, as I do, Philly soul, or you could like classical music, but the creators of these musical genres are actually adhering to certain auditory properties that makes us be moved by different genres of music. In a sense, well, not in a sense, music is mathematical. All that goes out the window when you have just random noise that's just postmodern music, or you have postmodern art. One of the other clips that the Advertising Standards of Canada came up with is you see a guy, working hard on a painter working hard on a painting, and then when you zoom back, you see that all of the painting is just a white canvas. By the way, I actually contacted the folks at that foundation, which by the way, I think they have 26 subscribers on their YouTube channel. So you'd think that they would want the promotion that might come from my, speaking about their laudable efforts. So I contacted them and say, hey, do you mind if I use your clips? By the way, I probably didn't have to seek their permission, because under the fair use clause, I was going to be engaging in an academic criticism, or to use their clips as part of an academic exercise, in this case, discussing postmodern gibberish. But the person in question, I won't mention who she is, decided to not grant me permission. So this is what you call an enemy of human decency. But in any case, they're still going to get the promotion, because I do support what they're trying to do, and that is to hold advertisers to a high standard of veracity. But in any case, going back to by the way, I'll put the links to the two advertisements in question. They're quite hilarious. You should really watch them. But the empty white canvas ad that they came out with actually is something that I experienced way back. I think it was in 1996. I had been invited by a friend of mine to Pittsburgh. We had both done our PhDs at Cornell, and then he had gone on for his first job as an assistant professor at Carnegie Mellon, and he invited me to visit him in Pittsburgh. And during one of the days, I had gone to the Carnegie Museum. And when I wasn't accompanied by my friend. I was by myself, spending an afternoon going around the museum. And then I get to an empty white canvas, which of course I completely understood what that complete fraudulent nonsense was. and I demanded to see the curator of the museum. And so somebody said, well, what is it? Can we help you, sir? I said, well, I demand to speak to the curator of the museum. So then some other woman came along, an affable woman. How can we help you, sir? I don't remember who she was exactly. I said, what is this garbage? She goes, what do you mean? I said, I paid money to get in here, and you're posting or you're exhibiting an empty white canvas. That's fraudulent. What is this? Of course, I knew exactly what, it was postmodernist art. Who are we to judge what art is? And of course, that's exactly what she answered. Well, isn't it wonderful, sir, that here we are, it's engendering. I don't think she used that word, but I'm paraphrasing her. It is engendering a conversation between us. And so that's what's so beautiful about art. Of course, complete nonsense. In any case, there are many ways to study art. Here I have for you one fantastic book, The Art Instinct by Dennis Dutton, who I believe has passed away. So this book looks at art from an evolutionary perspective. There's also a book by which I cite in my first book, The Evolutionary Basis of Consumption, by Disa Nayake. I tried to look for it. I know that I have it in my personal library, but I couldn't quickly locate it. The title of the book is Homo Aestheticus, Where Art Comes From and Why. In this case, she argues for the adaptive value of art. There are, of course, non-evolutionary ways to study art. So here's an example of a book which I only read about maybe the first 30, 40, or 50 pages. I bought this book maybe around 2001 in Europe, and I was very excited to read it because it's a book that looks at the economics of art. So it's kind of quite interesting. Economics, numbers. How do you place a price on something as non-tangible as art? It turns out, by the way, that at least from what I remember from the book, that investment in art can be quite a lucrative exercise. But in any case, there are many ways to study art, very valid, very scientific ways to study art. But of course, most of us go to the museum not for an intellectual exercise. We go to the museum to be moved by art because there's some visceral way by which each of us is moved by art. It enriches us in ways that we don't have to intellectualize. And so what I thought I would do for the rest of the clip, I wanted to give you sort of this prelude, is I've put together a few photos that I took yesterday at the visit, during our visit at the Musée des Beaux-Arts, some of which are what I consider, of course, true art. Now, you might prefer Cubism, you might prefer Impressionism, you might prefer realism, you might like the Art Deco style or not. The issue is not to discuss, which styles are, appropriate versus those that are not. Tastes cannot always be argued for or against. But what we can say is some things are art and others are not. I propose the following. If I, as an artist, can exactly replicate what you do in exactly 3 seconds, then it's not art. Lionel Messi is Lionel Messi, not because soccer skills are subjective, and who are we to judge whether my overweight, now late Aunt Henriette, who's never played soccer, whether she's better or not as good as Lionel Messi. No, people pay millions and millions of dollars to have Messi play for their team and to go and watch Messi because he does something that no one else can do. And that's why we consider his soccer playing skills as an art form. We go see singers because they can hit notes that the rest of us can't hit. We go see ballets precisely because the ballerinas can move in ways that the rest of us can't achieve. So to argue that putting a white canvas is a piece of art that is worthy of spending millions of dollars on it, or however much the idiots had spent on that particular piece, is an affront to human decency. It's an affront to our sense of collective aesthetics. So without further ado, what I'm going to do next is simply walk through a bunch of paintings and other art pieces. I think there's one sculpture in there that, of course, are true art. And then I'll show you examples from yesterday's visit to the museum of fraudulent, quote, postmodernist art. Cheers. Okay, so here we have an example of Impressionist art. Here's another piece. I can't remember who's the painter. Here's another gorgeous piece. Here's yet a spectacular other true art piece. Here's Picasso. Another fantastic piece. Check out the snarl of the dog. The consuming instinct is being triggered here. Gorgeous sculpture with a background painting. And now we come to the scammer Andy Warhol. Look at this one. Wow, 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 wow. Green squares. This one's even more infantile. But boy, it's such beautiful art. Look at this one. I'd like to see how much they paid for this one. This is just a canvas painted in black. This next one is a yellow canvas with some tears. And finally, the most beautiful art that nature could ever hope to create. And the sculpture is also nice. Cheers, everybody.